Hello students, I am RJ ma'am is with you to start the lecture number 1 of the topic nutrition. Actually, life processes occurs and it consists of many things, that is organization, reproduction, nutrition, respiration, excretion and many more processes in your life. So students, today my topic is nutrition of chapter number 1, that is life processes. So, this is lecture number 1 of nutrition. So, let us talk about that what is nutrition, students. So, first you have to understand this thing, that what is nutrition and what is a nutrient. Actually, a nutrient is a substance which is required by your body for proper functioning of the cells in the form of vitamins, minerals, carbohydrates, fats, lipids, fatty acids and many more things. Now, there is an example. Your mother forces you to eat each and every kind of food. Okay, and if you are non-vegetarian, then you are taking in meat, beef, eggs, fish also. So, these contains proper amount of proteins in them. And these proteins forms the building blocks of your body. So, the proteins are really important for your body as they consist of amino acids. And amino acids forms proteins. That is the function of ribosome, which we will learn further in the cellular part. Okay students, so you have to understand this thing, that first thing I am going to tell is what is nutrition about. Okay, so first we have to see the definition of nutrition over here. So what is nutrition? Nutrition is a process of intake of nutrients like carbohydrates, fats, proteins, minerals, vitamins and water also. So do you think so students? Water is also a nutrient. Actually, water is the source for each and every kind of cell functioning because it contains H2O and our body requires the oxygen as well as hydrogen also that comes from water. So, it is counted in the nutrient part. Okay, so nutrition is a process of intake of all these things like carbohydrates which we get from fruits and vegetables. In mainly vegetables like potato, many kind of carbohydrates are present. Okay, if you are eating rice, then you are consuming starch, that is also the form of carbohydrates. Okay, now we are going to talk about fats. We occupy fats from usually oils. Okay, if you are eating more amount of non-veg material, then it also consists of some fatty acids. But the oil which you are eating contain many kind of fatty acids which are also essential for our body, but they create obesity also if they are taken in larger amount. Okay, now we talk about proteins. So proteins are usually gathered from the non-veg material. Maybe it be a beef, chicken or anything else. And if we talk about the vegetarian food, then through vegetarian food, the protein is taken from pulses and cereals. Okay. Now minerals, vitamins and water. So minerals and vitamins we gather from the dry fruits as well as the fruits. The variety of fruits which we are eating contains many kind of vitamins and minerals as well. Okay. By an organism as well as utilization of these nutrients by the organism. Now, what happens students, when we are intaking the food, what happens? It just breaks down inside our body. Means the complex material which is going inside our body breaks down into simpler substances and then it is utilized by our cells for the proper functioning of our body. So for an example, if you are doing gymming or any kind of sport activity, then you require higher amount of protein. Then what you will do? You will eat eggs, you will eat the pulses or cereals. Okay, you will eat fruits also for the proper functioning of the body and development of muscles. Okay, so this is all about nutrition. Now students, I am going to show you a very small video clip through which you will understand the value of the macronutrients in our body. So first thing is that the calories which we take in our body is the source of energy, and the macronutrients are really present in the environment which we take in the form of proteins, in the form of carbohydrates and fats. Now let us take a look about proteins. So what the protein do in our body? Actually, 1 gram of protein is responsible for giving 4 calories to us. Now it is responsible for our growth, for the repairment of body. It is the main function of protein. Now if a person is doing gym, then he is going to take a proper amount of protein for the development of its muscles. Now the sources of protein may be the non-veg material like chicken, like beef. Okay, you can see here it is also the non-veg material, that is the main source. But if we talk about different thing, that is fish or nuts or eggs, they are counted into the secondary source. Now I am going to discuss about the carbohydrates. So carbohydrates gives us 4 calories per 1 gram. Okay, if you are taking 1 gram of carbohydrate, then you are consuming 4 calories. Okay, now main function is energy production. Now how energy is produced by the carbohydrates? Actually it just gets divided in our body for the production of glucose. Okay, the starch gets converted into glucose. Now carbohydrates are of 2 types, students. First is simple one and second one is complex one. So if we talk about the simple one and the complex one, there is a differentiation between both of the two. Actually, they are usually used for the energy production processes. But how a particular person consume them? If the person is non-vegetarian, then he is going to consume different kind of carbohydrates. If a person is vegetarian, then he is going to consume different carbohydrates. Now let us see here. If we talk about simple carbohydrates, they have fast functions. If you are eating any kind of energy drink like Red Bull or fruits or candies, if we talk about complex, then the rice or the daily food which you are consuming comes under the category of carbohydrates. But they are slow acting. Now why they are slow acting? Because they are very complex. And when they are complex, the body has to provide it more energy to break it down. Now we are going to discuss about the fat part, which is very essential also, but more amount of fat can destroy your body also. But a body says no, no, no to the fat. Why it says no? Because a simple person who is consuming more amount of fat inside its body will get obese. Okay, now if a person get obese, then he can occupy many kind of diseases inside its body. Okay. So, 9 calories are taken from 1 gram of fat. So, this is a large amount of calories. So, a person become fat if he or she is consuming more amount of fat. Now, what are the functions of fat? Let us see here. So, first is the breakup of energy, that is the backup of energy. It is essential for our hair, for skin, for nails, as well as the most important part of a human body, hormones. Okay, now the sources may be fish, nuts, eggs, any kind of thing which you are eating fatty. That is the most important. Oils. Okay, if you are eating oil in a larger amount, then you are getting fatty day by day. So it's good, not bad, but if you are taking or consuming in a proper amount. So in this video, I talked about the 3 essential things which are required for the energy production in our body. That is, first thing, carbohydrates, second thing, the fats, and the last thing, that is proteins. So protein actually does not make a person fat, but more amount of protein which is consumed by a person may get some kind of diseases related to proteins only. So a person should take a balanced diet, which is very essential. Okay. You should include some kind of carbohydrates, proteins, vitamins, minerals, okay, in your diet. It is very essential. So, this is an example over here. There is a boy, John, and John mother tell him to eat each and everything like the eggs also, fruits also, and a proper balanced diet also. Because the John is doing the work like studies. If he is doing sporty work, then he need more amount of proteins and vitamins as well as minerals also. And John, if studying, then he need more amount of water plus fruits, which provides him with the energy and does not makes his body fatter. So this is very essential, students, that a person should acquire proper nutrition according to their age. This is very essential. Okay, students. So let us move on towards the next part. That is my content part of today's lecture. So my content part of today's lecture is about the mode of nutrition. Now the second thing which we are going to talk about is some important facts. So what are the some important facts? Actually, I am going to tell you in every lecture about some important facts which are related for the nutrition of a human body or a plant as well, because a plant also requires proper amount of nutrition. Okay. Now, how will a plant get nutrition? Actually, we know about the animals. We are getting nutrition from the plant as well because they are autotrophic. But we are what? We are just heterotropic. We are dependent upon the plants. But plants prepare their own food in the presence of sunlight, chlorophyll and water. Okay, CO2. That is the photosynthesis process. So, how they do it, we are going to study about this thing in the next lecture. But let's see first the mode of nutrition. So what is the mode of nutrition? Actually, the mode of nutrition is divided further, or we can say it is bifurcated into two categories, student. So what are the two categories of mode of nutrition? If we talk about, the first one is the autotrophic mode of nutrition and second one is the heterotropic mode of nutrition. Now if we talk about the autotrophic mode of nutrition, so it resembles to the mode in which a particular organism prepares their own food for their survival. So it is known as what? Autotrophic. So they are preparing their food by their own. But if we talk about the heterotropic mode of nutrition, then an organism is just dependent on the another organism for their food. Okay. So it is the dependency. Okay. Organism is dependent on the another organism for the food. Now if we talk about autotrophic, then it may be plants, because plants prepare their own food in the presence of sunlight, chlorophyll and carbon dioxide, okay, through photosynthesis process. So we can take the example over here, that is about plants. But if we talk about the heterotropic mode of nutrition, then we are going to say that heterotrophs may be the human beings or the animals. Okay. But in this case, some bacteria like the decomposers are also heterotrophs. Actually, they are just dependent on the another organism or the dead end decay for their mode of nutrition. Okay. So, I am writing here human beings, okay, like us. And if we talk about the animals, so animals also are counted in heterotropic, but I am giving example of bacteria also. Now what are bacteria? You have read it into 9th class very clearly that what is a bacteria. Now I am going to talk about the mode of nutrition of bacteria in this particular lecture. Okay, so if we talk about bacteria, there are decomposers which are present inside the soil for the nutrition. Okay students, so let's see the first topic, that is autotrophic mode of nutrition. So auto means self and tropic means food. Okay, so tropic means food. Now next, it is a mode of nutrition in which organisms prepare their own food. So they are preparing their own food by themselves. Next, inorganic molecules like carbon dioxide and water are converted into organic molecules like carbohydrates in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll. Okay, so I want to write here that the carbohydrate which is prepared is just the glucose. Actually, what happens in the presence of sunlight, chlorophyll, carbon dioxide and water? Plants prepare their own food in the form of carbohydrates plus oxygen. So oxygen is utilized by the humans, and then the glucose which is being prepared inside the plant is supplied to the different parts of the plant like the fruits, the vegetable or the roots, and which we consume and we get healthier. Okay students, so this is the autotrophic mode of nutrition. Now it is the greatest example of autotrophs, that is green plants. So green plants are what? Autotrophs. Now the next point, that is about the heterotrophs. Now the next point, autotrophs are further categorized as. So first I am going to tell you about the photoautotroph. Okay, now what is meant by photo? It is just depending upon the light energy. So those which utilize sunlight for preparing their food. So the plants, obviously plants utilized what? Sunlight for preparing their food. So they are counted in the photoautotrophs. Next, examples like plants like algae, purple sulfur and green sulfur bacteria. So I told you about bacteria in the heterotropic mode of nutrition, but I did not told you in the autotrophic mode of nutrition. So students, you have to remember this thing, that some bacteria are counted in autotrophs and some bacteria are counted in heterotrophs. Now you can see here, these are the photoautotrophic bacteria. Actually, if we talk about purple sulfur bacteria or green sulfur bacteria, they consist of the chlorophyll pigment, and because of the presence of chlorophyll pigment, they can photosynthesize. Next, I am going to talk about chemoautotrophs. So as the name suggests, chemo means what? Chemical. Okay. Now, those which utilize chemical energy for preparing their food. So for the preparation of the food, they utilize what? Chemical energy. Okay, so let us see the example. Examples are nitrifying bacteria. Actually, nitrifying bacteria are those bacteria which are present inside the soil. So have you listened the word about nitrifying bacteria in the 9th class as well? The rhizobium. Did you understand this thing? The rhizobium which was living in the symbiotic relationship with the leguminous plants. Okay, so are you remembering the things that you have been taught in the 9th class? So this is the nitrifying bacteria. I am just writing the name over here. This is rhizobium which is present inside the soil, and it forms the root nodules and helps in the nitrogen fixation. Okay, iron bacteria, sulfur bacteria and methane bacteria. So all these bacteria are chemoautotrophs. So you have to remember this thing, students, that you have to learn all the examples. Actually, in the 10th class, from the board point of view and also from the NTSC point of view, this is very, very important to learn that examples. Okay, examples are usually asked in the form of questions. So you have to remember them. So I am just revising this thing. Okay, look at the board here. If we talk about photoautotroph, these are the organisms which utilize sunlight energy for the food preparation. That is example plants, algae, purple sulfur bacteria or green sulfur bacteria. If we talk about chemoautotrophs, they just utilize the chemical energy. For example, nitrifying bacteria, iron bacteria, sulfur bacteria and methane bacteria. Okay students, now I am going to show you various diagrams of the chemo as well as photoautotrophs. So first I am going to show you about the photoautotrophs. So you can see here, this is the purple sulfur bacteria which is purple in color, and it contains some amount of chlorophyll and can photosynthesize its own food. Next, it is the green sulfur bacteria. So it is very green in color. You can see here in this picture. Okay, and this contains chlorophyll, so it can make their own food. Now, next I am going to talk about the nitrifying bacteria, which is the chemoautotroph. Now what happens during the nitrifying bacteria? These nitrifying bacteria which are present inside the soil fixes the nitrogen inside the plant. Now they perform the function of nitrogen fixation. And how they perform the function? Actually, there is a good example of rhizobium. Rhizobium is just a bacteria which is the nitrogen fixation bacteria. Okay, now what happens? It makes the root nodules. Okay, now the nitrogen which is present inside the soil is converted to ammonia. So you can see here the ammonium ion is formed And after this, what will happen, students? This is converted to nitrites, and then nitrites is converted to nitrates, and then nitrates is assimilated by the plants. So you can see here that the nitrogen which is present in the highest amount in our atmosphere is consumed by the plants in the form of nitrates, and these nitrogen fixing bacteria converts the nitrogen in the form of nitrates through these processes. First is the ammonification, that is formation of ammonium ion. Second is nitrification, that is formation of nitrites. Third is nitrifying bacteria function, that it converts nitrates, and then it is assimilated by the plants. You have read about the nitrogen fixation cycle in 9th class as well. So I just not have to tell you about many things. So you are understanding this thing, that it is the sort of chemo-autotroph. Next is the iron bacteria. This is the iron eating bacteria. You can see here the particles of iron which has been rusted, the brown flaky substance which has been formed. So it is iron eating bacteria. Next is methane bacteria. Actually, methane bacteria is a bacteria which converts the decomposed food into the methane. Okay, the CH4. So this is the formula of methane. This is CH4. Okay. Now what happens? These are known as what? Methanogens also. Okay. So when an animal body die or a plant body die, what is going to happen? That is converted into methane gas. Okay. The methane bacteria comes over there. It acts like a decomposer. Okay. And then it gets converted into methane, that is CH4. So are you understanding about the photoautotrophs as well as chemoautotrophs? Now next move on toward the next topic, that is heterotropic mode of nutrition. Okay, so hetero means different and tropic means food. So different means what? So let us see here. So it is mode of nutrition in which organisms derive their food from some other animals or plants. They cannot prepare their own food. So the best example is me or you. Okay, the human beings are really responsible for eating the amount of food which is produced by the autotrophs, that is plants. Okay, now we talk about the animals also. So animals are usually eating the plants, but they are carnivorous also. They are just dependent upon the non-veg material also. So heterotrophs are those organisms, or we can say the heterotropic mode of nutrition is just the dependent nutrition on the another organism. Okay, so let us see here. All the animals have heterotropic mode of nutrition. Most bacteria and fungi also have heterotropic mode of nutrition. So you can see here, students, that bacteria and fungi as well as all other organisms which are dependent upon the another organism for their survival comes under the category of heterotropic mode of nutrition, including us also. Actually, we do not contain chlorophyll and animals also do not contain chlorophyll. But if we talk about some bacteria and fungi, they also do not contain chlorophyll. So they just live on the symbiotic relationship, which we are going to discuss further. So we are living, but we are dependent. But plants are not dependent. They are living, but they are not dependent. They are autotrophs and we are heterotrophs. Okay. So the non-green plants like yeast are also heterotroph. This is very important. You have to mark a star mark over here that the yeast are also heterotrophs. Okay, students. Now, heterotrophs are further categorized depending upon the nature of the food they consume. Now, which type of food they are consuming, they are categorized under it. So, first is the herbivores. So, if I take an example of vegan or we can say a vegetarian, then what is a herbivore? Which is dependent just and just upon the herbs, shrubs, trees or plants. Okay. So, animals which eat only plants, example cow, goat, or we can include the human beings also. Some human beings do not eat the non-veg part, so they are counted in the herbivores. Next I am going to discuss about is the carnivore. So as the name suggests, carnivores are the animals or the organisms which depend upon another animal for their survival. So they feed on the flesh of other animals. So lion and tiger. Okay, so they are the animals which are dependent on another animals for their survival. They do not eat the plants. Okay, lion and tiger do not eat plants. You have to remember this thing. Next, Omnivores. So omnivores, they feed on plants as well as animals. So we can count us also in omnivores. We eat plants also, we eat animals also. Okay. Example, dog, human, sparrow, cockroach or rats. So these are the organisms which are omnivores. Okay. Now we are moving towards the next part. So detrivores. So what are detrivores, students? Feed on detritus or dead organic remains like earthworms. So earthworms are the organisms which are present inside the soil and they just feed upon the dead and decay material which is present inside the soil. Okay, and they are also useful for making the soil fertile. Actually what they do, they just break down the dead and decay material and release the nitrogen from it, and then it creates a humus that is the top layer of the soil. So they are useful for the soil fertility maintenance also. Next point, sanguivorous. Sanguivorous is feed on blood. So example, leech, female mosquito, vampire, bats. So this is very dangerous. Actually they are just sucking the blood of a person, okay, or an animal. Okay, they just feed upon an animal body. Okay, so you can see here the leeches which is present in the hair. It just sucks the blood. If we talk about female mosquito, female Anopheles mosquito, okay, the plasmodium carrier. So she also depend upon the blood. Next, frugivorous, feeds on fruit. So there are some kind of organisms which just depend upon the fruits. So example, parrots, monkey, birds. So they just eat some kind of fruits. Okay, students. Insectivorous. So what are insectivorous? They feed on insects for their survival. For example, bats, lizards, spiny anteater, pitcher plant. So you have listened about the pitcher plant or bats or the lizards also you have seen in your home also. If lizard is present, what it do? It just eat the small insects which are present inside our home or anywhere else. So they are just dependent upon the insect. So the heterotropic mode of nutrition is divided into all these categories. Okay, they may include the detrivores, the sanguivores, frugivores, insectivores and many more. Okay, students. Now, next I am going to take to you the another world of the nutrition, that is on the basis of mode of feeding, organisms are categorized as. So, first is the holozoic mode of nutrition, second is saprotropic mode of nutrition, third is parasitic mode of nutrition, and the last one is symbiotic association. Now, what are the basic differences between all the four? We are going to understand all these things in this particular lecture. So, students, I am going to start with the first mode of nutrition, that is holozoic. So, what is holozoic? Holozoic nutrition means feeding on solid food. So, any kind of organism which is just feeding upon the solid food is known as holozoic mode of nutrition. So, the large organic molecules of ingested food are broken down into smaller soluble substances with the help of digestive enzymes. Now, I am just taking an example of a human body. What we do, we eat fruits, we eat vegetables and the non-veg part also. The beef protein, or we can say the pork or meat or chicken. Now we are eating these. So they are complex materials. Now the enzymes which are present in our body will help the food to convert into simpler substances which is utilized by the cells. Okay, students. Now the simple molecules are then absorbed in the cell and utilized. So I am just telling all these lines to you that the food which is taken inside our body is just broken down into simpler substances and then it is utilized for the further metabolic activities. Okay, now the undigested food and unabsorbed part of the food thrown out of the body of the organism by the process called egestion. Now we do the excretion process also. It is just the sort of egestion. Okay, now we are consuming a lot of amount of fat, carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, each and everything, but our body does not require it. So what will happen? The food will be egested out of our body in the form of excreta. Okay, it happens in the animals, it happens in each and kind of organism which is consuming the complex food. Okay, for example, amoeba and human. Now, I want to tell you the example of amoeba. Actually, it is a unicellular organism which does not have a fixed shape. But the good thing is about amoeba that it forms the holozoic mode of nutrition. What happens? It just engulfs the food, and after engulfing, if the body of amoeba does not require the more amount of food, then it will be excreted out from the body. Similar in the case of humans, what happens? We are just going to the mall. Consider it like that. Okay, it is just an example. We are going to the mall. Okay, we are eating pizza, burger, we are consuming cold drinks, soft drinks, each and everything we are eating. We are just putting the things inside our stomach like dustbin. Now, the next day what will happen? The next day, the food will be excreted out because our body does not require the extra amount of fats, carbohydrates, proteins, vitamins, minerals. Okay, so all the food is digested out. So this is the holozoic mode of nutrition. Now students, we are going to talk about the saprotropic mode of nutrition. Now in the saprotropic mode of nutrition, we are just going to talk about the sapro word. So first you have to think that what does sapro mean? Sapro means rotten. Okay, now rotten means what? Anything which has been fouled. Okay, it is known as rotten. Now, these organisms obtain food from dead and decaying organic matter. So all the things which are dead and decay is consumed by some kind of organisms. So they are known as what? The saprotrophs. Actually, the organisms which are decomposers are considered under the category of saprotrophs because if they are present in soil, then they will consume the dead and decay which is present inside the soil. Okay. Now the next point, they secrete some extracellular enzymes which break down the complex organic compounds into simpler forms. Okay. Now this is very important. How they will obtain their nutrition from the dead and decaying matter. So what they will do? They will secrete some kind of enzymes on a particular part of a dead and decay organism. Then what will happen? They will acquire the nutrition from it because the complex material has been broken down into simpler substances and then utilized by the saprotrophs. Okay students. Next point, examples. So the examples include fungi and bacteria. So as I told you, the bacteria, that is the decomposers which is present inside our soil, that are just dependent upon the soil nutrition, and soil contains dead and decay, maybe in the form of animal or plant decay, the litter which we have seen also. So they obtain nutrition from them. And if we talk about fungi, then fungi also forms the saprotropic mode of nutrition. So this is all about the saprotropic mode of nutrition. Next I am moving towards the parasitic mode of nutrition. Now what is parasiting? Is it harmful or useful? Actually it is very harmful. If a parasite is living inside a human body, then it can cause certain kind of diseases to the human body as well. And in some cases death may be caused if the condition is severe. Now these are the organisms which live on or inside other living organisms called host and obtain their food from them. So as I told you, they just host the living body and then they acquire the nutrition from the host body. For an example, if a worm is living inside my intestine, then what will happen? It acquire all the nutrition which I am gaining. Okay, I am just gaining the nutrition for my body. But the worm which is living inside the intestine will acquire the nutrition from my body. Actually, my body will get weaker and the worm will become healthier. So, this is very dangerous for a human being. Next, in this type of mode, guests get benefited while hosts get harmed. So, as I told you the example, if a ringworm or a tapeworm which is present inside our intestine harms you because it is taking the nutrition which is essential for your body cells. Okay students. Next, the mode of feeding depends upon the habitat and modifications of a parasite. Okay, so it just depends upon the habitat also and the modifications also. Now students, there are examples for the parasitic mode of nutrition. Actually, this world is just full of parasites. Maybe it be present in the human intestinal gut, or it be present in the environment, or it be present in the soil as well. Okay, so I am going to talk about each and everything about the parasites. So let us look at the examples of the parasite. I will show you the pictures also of tapeworm, plasmodium, cascata. So there are many plants also which acts as a role of parasite. Actually, there are some plants like cascata. I am just taking an example. So cascata is a plant which forms the nutrition from another plant body. Actually, it lacks chlorophyll. So it does not synthesize its own food. So what happens? It is just dependent on the another plant for the survival. So there are examples like tapeworm, which lives in the intestine of a human body. Next is the plasmodium, which lives in the liver cells of a human body. Next, there are several fungi like albugo, phytophthora, puccinia. Okay, now if we talk about bacteria, then there are some bacteria. Also flowering plants like cascata, amarbel. So this cascata is also known as amarbel in normal language. And some animals like plasmodium, which causes malaria in the human, ascaris, the round worm, enterobius, pinworm, tinea, tapeworm, fasciola, liver fluke. Okay, so these are several examples of parasites. So are you seeing that there are variety of parasites which are present inside our environment in the form of bacteria, in the form of plants also, or in the form of fungi? Okay, now cascata is a parasitic plant that lacks both chlorophyll and leaves as well. So cascata, as I told you, it is a parasitic plant which just hosts on the another plant and sucks its nutrition. Now how it happens, I am going to tell you through the pictures. Okay, now next point is it attaches to the host and gives out hostoria, or the sucking roots that get attached to the phloem of the host and derive nutrition. So what does it do? It just creates the hostoria. Okay, hostoria is just the evagination which is created by cascata plant. Now this hostoria gets the nutrition from the plant and give it to the cascata plant. So it just like a mediator between both of the two. So what it is doing, it is just destroying the another plant because it is just surviving upon the nutrition of another plant, the amarbel, that is also known as cascata. Okay students, so these are the examples of all the parasites. You have to remember this thing. Okay, learn it line wise, you will never forget. Okay, so by showing the pictures, you will get more easy by the things. So first is the tapeworm. So if we talk about tapeworm, it is just present in the intestinal part of a human being. Okay, now if I talk about tapeworm, it is just rod-like structure. It is having a slimy body and having a rod-like structure. Now you can see here it is present inside the gut of a person, the intestinal part of the person. Okay, now what happens students, if tapeworm is present inside the intestine, then it can cause certain type of abdominal cramps inside the person's body, or it can cause severe stomach ache also. So this is parasitic. Next, if we talk about plasmodium. So plasmodium is residing inside the liver, or we can say the hepatic cells of a person's body. Okay, now in our liver, the plasmodium is getting transferred from the female Anopheles mosquito. Actually, the female Anopheles mosquito is a carrier of plasmodium. Okay, this parasite. Now this parasite gets inside the person's body and then it just attacks on the liver cell and gets divided further. Now when it just gets divided or multiply into millions, then it causes malaria in the human being. So this plasmodium is the cause of malaria. So it is also known as the malarial parasite. Okay students. So this is very easy to learn through pictures. Actually, the recognition is very important for you all. So you have to remember some kind of example because they are very important for your theory exams as well. Okay, so the plasmodium is a malarial parasite and it causes malaria in the human beings transferred from the female Anopheles mosquito. Now, next, as I told you about the cascata, So Cuscuta is known as what? Amar bale also. Now what it is doing actually, the Amar bale is creating a hostoria. Okay, so this is a kind of hostoria which is created by Amar bale. Now this hostoria is responsible for sucking the nutrition from the plant which has been hosted, and then it provides Cuscuta to the nutrition. So this is Cuscuta plant. Next, Ascarias. So Ascarias is just a worm which is rounded in shape. Okay, now it is present inside the intestinal part of a human being, and it can cause a disease which is named as what? Ascariasis. So this is the disease which is caused by Ascarias. Now there are usually very small symptoms which can be seen of the Ascarias, like the severe abdominal pain, stomach ache, or there are some problems in the intestinal gut which a person suffers from. Okay. Now next I am going to talk about the Symbiotic Association. Now what is Symbiotic Association, student? It is just the benefiting of both the organism. As I take an example of your friend. Okay, you take the pen or a book from your friend and then you explain something to your friend. So you both are benefited. You have taken the book or pen and you are providing him with the knowledge. So you both are benefited. So this is all about symbiotic relationship. Symbiotic relationship means if the two organisms are benefited by each other. So it is also known as mutualism. So mutualism means you are in a mutual bond with one another. Actually, the thing is that a mutual bond, in a mutual bond, both the organisms are benefited. Okay, no one is in loss. So a mode of nutrition in which two organisms lives in association that both of them will be benefited, as I told you. Now, in this case, with some symbionts whose nutrition is referred to as the symbiotic nutrition. So this is very important that you have to understand this thing, that the two organisms can be benefited in a relationship if they are relating as symbiotic. Okay. Now, for an example, Escherichia coli, that is also known as what? E. coli, which lives in your intestine. So Escherichia coli that lives in the intestine of a man synthesize vitamin B12. So it is responsible for synthesizing what? Vitamin B12. Now, which is used by a man, and the E. coli receives in turn simpler food from the intestine of the man. Now what is happening actually? The E. coli, which is just producing the vitamin B12. Now vitamin B12 is essential for our body. Okay. Now how it is benefited? It is just acquiring some kind of nutrition which is essential for the survival. So it is not harming the body. Actually, we talked about tapeworm or ringworm. They were harming the body. They were sucking the nutrition from the body. Escherichia coli is not sucking the nutrition. Actually, it is just taking the nutrition, but it is giving the human body by supplying vitamin B12. Okay. So it is the whole about symbiotic association, students. Now, students, I am going to discuss some very important facts. So, important facts are, first is nutrition can be divided into two categories on the basis of occurrence. So, on the basis of occurrence, it can be divided into two categories. First is the nutrition in plants and second is the nutrition in animals. So, we will talk about the nutrition in plants and nutrition in animals in the further upcoming lectures. Okay, students. Now, the first important fact is herbivorous plants like cow which eat grass need a longer small intestine to allow the cellulose present in the grass to be digested completely. So, actually herbivores just depend upon the grass only. That the cow has a larger gut. Intestine is very, very larger. Okay. Now, second important fact is the carnivorous animals like tigers which eat meat have a shorter small intestine. So, a meat does not have cellulose. So, they do not need a larger intestine to digest the meat. Okay. So, the carnivores have a smaller intestine and a herbivore has a larger intestine. So they are the two important facts. Now I am moving toward the third important fact. So the third important fact is maximum number of teeth, that is 50, are present in opossum. So opossum is an animal. You can see here it is a furry animal which represents somewhat like mouse. Okay, you can see here. So it has maximum teeth and the teeth count is 50. So these are the really important facts which you should know. Okay students, so they are very important that you should know, and I will tell you some important facts in each and every lecture of the nutrition. Okay, now students, we talked about many modes of nutrition. Firstly, we talked about the autotrophic mode of nutrition. Secondly, we talked about the heterotropic mode of nutrition. Now let us revise quickly before ending this lecture because it is very important. In the next lecture, I am going to talk about the nutrition in plant, which is autotrophic. But I told you that there are some bacteria or fungi also that accumulates the food by themselves. Okay, they form the food by themselves in the presence of carbon dioxide, water, or we can say in the presence of light, which is very essential for completing the process of photosynthesis. Okay students, so it is all about the autotrophs. But if we talk about heterotrophs, that is us. We are just dependent on the another organism for our survival. We are gaining the nutrition from the another organism. Okay, maybe it be a plant or an animal. So we talked about the modes of nutrition in a particular plant or a human being also. So I told you that the nutrition is very necessary. It can be in the form of proteins, it can be in the form of carbohydrates, and the most importantly fat also. But I told you this thing that fat is not so necessary for a human body. Actually, it is just required in a smaller amount. But a human body can gather in a higher amount if a person is eating the fatty food or a person is eating the food which is made up of totally oils. Okay, so oil is required in our body but not in a larger amount. Carbohydrates are required and proteins are required in a larger amount, but if you are taking it in extreme way, then they are going to be egested from your body in the form of excretions. That is the excreta or the urine purpose. Okay, so we talked about many modes of nutrition. They can be detrivorous, saprotropic. Okay, no, so you have understood that there are some organisms which are dependent just upon the dead end decay. Some organisms are dependent upon plants. Some organisms are not dependent upon plant as well. That is the plants itself. Okay, they just require the nutrition by themselves. They just create their own food in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll and carbon dioxide and water. Okay, we talked about the holozoic mode of nutrition. We talked about the saprotropic, parasitic mode of nutrition, which is very important to learn. I told you about the ringworm, plasmodium, and the plant can be also parasitic. It is just depending on the another plant for their survival. Like I gave you the example of amarbel, that is cascata. Okay, some bacteria, some yeast, some mold, some fungi also depends on the another plant for their survival. So you can see here that each and every organism is just dependent on the another for survival except plants. Plants are just independent. They do not require any another organism for their survival. But the thing is, the nitrifying bacteria are very essential. Actually, the nitrifying bacteria just convert the nitrogen which is present inside the soil into ammonium. Then ammonium is converted into nitrites. Nitrites are converted into nitrates and they are assimilated inside the plants. Okay, now we eat nitrates, then it is again supplied to the environment, and this is how the whole nitrogen cycle goes on, which we talked about in the 9th class also. So students, it is very necessary to learn all these things because they are just interrelated with one another. Plants are related to us, we are related to plants. We lastly talked about the symbiotic relationship. Actually, in symbiotic relationship, what happens? Both the organisms are benefited. We talked about the nitrifying bacteria. In what it happens? The nitrifying bacteria are also living in symbiotic relationship only. Lichens are also related to this symbiotic relationship only. Actually, what happens? The bacteria is just converting the nitrogen and giving it to the plants, but the nutrition or the nutrients which they require, they get it from the plants as well. Okay, so this is all about the mode of nutrition and we talked in this particular lecture. So in the next lecture, we are going to talk about the mode of nutrition in the plants. How plants make their food in the presence of carbon dioxide, water, sunlight and chlorophyll. That is how they complete the process of photosynthesis. They do transpiration, transportation also. So I am going to talk about all these things in the next lecture, that is lecture number 2. Okay students, so be tuned and thank you.